All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you?
Hello there, Lauren. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you. We finally are getting some fall weather in
I
Long
know.
Beach, though.
I was thinking that actually it's gotten colder temperatures and I just absolutely love the fall. I'm not a big summer person. I don't like the heat. So the fall coming in makes me happy. But I was going to ask you, does anybody else feel like time is going by so quickly? I feel like I wake up and then all of a sudden it's time to go to bed and then I was like it's October already. What is happening with time?
I
Um,
know.
my mother used to say that, as you got older, time sped up. I must be very old. That's all I can say. And the other thing I got to say before we get started, I'm still laughing from our ending of the show last week. And for any of those who did not see it, this is going to make you want to go back and see the rerun. My mother kissed John Lennon and my father paid for it. Okay, I am just going to say that much. I laughed the rest of the day, and I know those of you who were here last week are probably still laughing as well. So that will be probably the all-time high on endings of a show because I don't think I can ever beat that one. But
Completely
we have
agree.
an awesome show today. So Lauren, why don't you kick us off? Let's get going.
All right, let's get started. And to your note about days quickly going by, I didn't realize it was going to be so fast to get old. I Why is that speeding up?
That is so true.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Laura, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, let's dive in. So, good morning again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lauren Simpson, and I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. Now, we are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no cost services to local small businesses. Now, here's the kicker. We're able to offer our services at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of all of our fees. So if you are in our service area, which would be the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties, you can locate a physical center location. Just take a look at the map in front of you, and you'll see that we are in Camarillo, Santa Clarita, Pasadena, all the way out to Laverne. We are throughout the Los Angeles and South Bay areas down into Long Beach. Again, here's why you want to get in contact with us. We offer no cost business advising, which means that you're able to sit one on one with one of our business experts, excuse me. And when I say experts, I am talking about individuals who have vast knowledge in various fields, whether it be just on the job experience, like decades in some cases, or just incredible schooling. So let me dive in a little bit. When it comes to the experts that we have those who can assist handymen to go into construction. We have those who can assist you with market research if you're just starting out and you want to create that business plan. Uh, if you are kind of in the middle of things and you're trying to figure out your numbers, we have a guru on hand, and who is, of course, Miss Lori Williams, and she can assist you in first off making those numbers not so scary, and then getting you back on the on road. We also have virtual trainings, and those are going to be comprehensive workshops that assist you in beginning your business, adapting your business, or growing it. So here's the important info. This is how you get in contact with us because we'd love to work with you. You can reach us by phone, 866-588-7232, or you can go online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us and you're outside of the Los Angeles area or our service area, which again is the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties, you can go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. So, Lori, I'm going to stop my screen share. Quick housekeeping. Let's be sure to put all questions into the Q&A. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, good. All questions into the Q&A, and then check out the chat. The chat's going to have useful information, links that Lori would like to share with you, as well as the party. We'd love to have you join the party in the chat. With that, Lori, I'm going to send it over to you.
Well, Lauren, and on not making numbers scary, which I do get that response a lot after the webinars, which I love. But here's a thought for everybody on that. When you know your numbers, they are actually your best friend. It's the only time they're scary is when you don't know your numbers. That's when they could be the enemy without you knowing that. So here we go with the myth buster for today. I'm going to talk slightly, just a little bit about this concept of when am I in business and when am I out of business. And I'm going to speak in reference to a sole prop in an LLC. As I always tell you, my myth busters come up from things I'm experiencing on a daily basis when working with people, mostly things they get in trouble for, and I'm trying to keep you out of trouble. So when you are technically in business with a LLC, let's start there, is when you first register and set the LLC up. So from that point on, you're responsible for the $800 franchise fee, etc. Now, for an LLC, when you are out of business is when you go through the process of filing the paper to dissolve the LLC. There's actual papers or documents that are called dissolution. And until you file those documents, you are technically still in business and responsible for the $800 and the other fees, the $25 statement of information, etc. Now, when you dissolve the LLC, you need to shut down the bank account. Even if you're going to a sole prop or some other company, that bank account is set up with the EIN of the LLC. So just like a social security number is attached to a human, the EIN is attached to the corporation. So when you dissolve an LLC, you need to shut down the bank account, shut down any business license you have under the LLC, every aspect. Where people get confused is they say things like, I opened an LLC, but I didn't do anything with it. And they believe that since they're not doing any business, especially sales, they kind of relate to in their head with sales, that they're not responsible for these different fees, the franchise tax, etc. Now, here's what happens. You end up getting suspended because you didn't pay the fees. You can't dissolve the company until you pay the fees. And so it becomes this terrible loop that you get into. So an LLC, you have to really think about, and I like to use an example like a marriage certificate. When am I married? When you have the certificate. When am I divorced? When you have a divorce certificate. Same thing. And all in between, I'm responsible for certain things. Now, a sole prop differs because it's more like when it is, when it's not, if I can explain it that way. So say I'm selling something at the flea market and I make some money that year, I file a Schedule C that shows that I was in business as a sole prop. When I don't make money, well, then I just don't file or I should say when I don't have transactions. Let me back up that. When I don't have any transactions, not don't make money. When I don't have any transactions, then I don't file a Schedule C. So a sole prop doesn't have to become in business by a triggered event of a document or out of business by a triggered event of a document. It's just literally the act of having transactions. This is why I suggest highly for people that don't have a huge risk legally to just operate as a sole prop as they're getting started, so they don't have to worry about the concepts of filing the legal papers, paying the fees, and then dissolving it if things do not work out. So hopefully that creates some clarity. Also, when you think about being in business or not from a tax perspective, think about transactions as well as from a business license. People will say, well, I didn't make any sales, but I actually conducted business because I bought, a website. I had somebody design the website. I paid for certain expenses. That's still considered business transactions. So if you are required to have a business license, that's not regarding whether or not you sold something. That's when you start having business transactions. There's a little bit of gray area and confusion on that, granted. And so I just wanted to clear up, especially the dissolving of the LLC. I've seen people repeatedly create LLCs, move from one state to another, not dissolve it, and it came back to haunt them. Don't want you to have that experience. So that's why I wanted to mention that today. Now, upcoming October series, I just finished session number 1, going into session number 2 and 3. Once again, I always tell you guys about this. It's all about managerial accounting. Once again, having an understanding of the numbers and not being afraid of the numbers anymore. I'm also repeating my legal structure and tax advantages for people who have questions about tax estimates, when or if I should be an S corporation. Do I need to pay myself a salary? How do I pay myself? What taxes do I have to pay in? this covers all those aspects. Going back to the financial literacy series, I think in November, I'm going to add another session, and it's going to be specific to those companies that are service-based companies, where I'm going to model out how you need to consider your pricing, how you need to look at billable versus non-billable, and kind of how to create a model specific to a service-based company. I'm going to start working on that. Hopefully I'll have that out maybe November, December. Upcoming shows next week, we're going to talk to Dan Davidson, Rose City Coffee, learn about the inspiration behind his company. Then we're going to have Valerie come on and talk about Intrepid Ayurveda. And a lot of people don't even know what Ayurveda is. So it's going to be an interesting conversation in many different ways. Now, today is another fascinating conversation that many of you may not even be aware of, this type of company. So what we're going to talk to today is Anna and Mara, who are the founders of Words and Motion Speech Therapy Group, known as WHAM, is a women-owned speech language pathology corporation whose primary focus is working with early intervention, which is birth to 3 years old. WHAM is dedicated to delivering services in underserved areas. Anna and Mara, welcome to the show.
Well,
So happy to have you guys here. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
thank you so much for inviting us.
Okay, we have to start out because I'm sure I'm not the only person. I know a little bit from working with you guys, but I bet you there's a lot of people in our audience that do not know what Speech Language Pathology Corporation even means. So let's start out by defining, what is that?
Sure. So in California, when speech pathologists open a practice and they're going to serve clients, they need to open a speech pathology professional corporation. So in a lot of states, when speech therapists start practicing, they may practice as a sole provider or they might practice as an LLC. But in California, if you're going to serve patients and clients, you need to be a professional corporation, just like a dentist or a doctor.
And it's so true, Anna, that you bring that up, because I get a lot of calls from people with the SBDC that are going into certain types of industries or companies, and California has strict rules on professional corporations. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now, I kind of understand speech pathology when I hear the words, but can we get some more examples? Like what does that mean? Why would somebody come to a speech pathologist? What kind of situations are you solving? I know those are probably not the proper technical clinical words, but if we can go with that.
Yeah, so speech pathology, people see speech pathologists. We serve people over the course of their lifespan, depending on their needs. People, people, older folks who are in, hospitals will be seen for, swallowing and cognitive disorders, maybe after a stroke or traumatic brain injury. And then all the way at the other end, which is where Anna and I are working now, we work in what's called early intervention, where that is the birth to 3. It's really about 18 months to 3 years, where we provide speech services, meaning we're working on communication issues, children who are having issues that developmentally, meaning they're not hitting the milestones, just like when you go to the doctor and they weigh your child, they take their height and they say, oh, he's in the 53rd percentile. There are milestones for speech just as well. So your pediatrician should be keeping an eye on that. You should be informed because there's plenty of information on the internet. And we see the children who are developmentally delayed, which has been a tsunami of needs since the pandemic.
I can only imagine. And, from my heart, I think this, I don't have a clinical understanding of it, but from my heart, I feel as though the ability to communicate, and I always had throughout my life, because I was always a lover of words. I started writing poems when I was a kid in words. So I've always been a lover of words. And I've always felt as though the ability to kind of manage a life and get the most out of it, if I can just use that term, is really depend on our ability to communicate, whatever form of communication it is. But I feel like that's a crucial component of our existence. Can I say it that way?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, and it's what's interesting is with the little ones who we see, the little ones, meaning about 18 months to 3 years, all the research shows that if you get in there early enough, early intervention, it's a life-changing situation. It literally changes the course of the child and their family's life. Frequently, the little ones that we see, they just have a basic delay in either receptive language, which is their ability to understand information coming in, follow directions and things like that, or expressive language, which is to be able to articulate your message so a listener can understand it. A lot of these kiddos, they will finish with us at 3 and they're done. Their percent delays are low enough where they're not considered delayed, and they go on happily and merrily. Other kids at 3 years, they might have something else going on, possibly a pending diagnosis of autism, and they may have speech and language through preschool, through elementary or middle school, depending on the severity of their delay. So it's a very rewarding age to work with. Very, very rewarding.
I want to come back before we end the show with talking about what you've seen since the pandemic, because I think that's a very interesting conversation to have as well. But before we go that, let's walk back a little bit. At one point in time, you guys were, I'm assuming, working for someone else or doing something else. So give us a little bit of your background, and then, when did you decide to enter the crazy world of starting your own company?
Well, Anna's a very successful businesswoman, and I actually worked with Anna as a speech pathologist while I was a single parent, working multiple jobs, doing what a lot of single parents do. And I was working in a school for Anna while I was working at USC, and I was also doing evaluations for the regional center. I would do about 40 evaluations for them a month. And in the process of doing that and seeing how it was done and how I thought, gee, I bet this could be done better, and then knowing Anna with her business background, we said, boy, we can do this. We can do this. And that's the origin of it. It's like we basically, they knew, we had a relationship established at South Central Los Angeles Regional Center. And just to educate people about the regional centers, they're not that well known, which is real tragedy. The regional centers are 21 government, state funded agencies in the state of California. And they provide free services to families and children with disabilities. And depending on the severity of the disability, you might have support through the child until the child's 21. And this is they provide respite services. They cover the whole gamut of the challenges these families face. And the pediatricians are supposed to be the ones educating the families in the course of their interactions during the child's first year of life. And if they, they're a fabulous organization. It's a big bureaucratic monster. So that's always a bit challenging, but the longer we're open, we've become one of their preferred providers. So we get lots of referrals, and we've gotten to know their eccentricities, you might say, and we're learning how to navigate them and not be so affronted by them, and just learn how to. It's very serpentine our work with them, because they're very big, they're very overwhelmed, and just like everyone is right now in our profession since the pandemic.
It reminds me a little bit, as you said, a lot of people don't know about it, like the SBDC. And I've never been a government employee. I'm not now, it's contracts that I have, but I've always been in the private sector, and being involved with the government. What I've learned is that it is very bureaucratic, but there's I want to call them feet on the street. There's these small little sections of the government, when you get down to like the advisors like myself, that they're really doing awesome things in the community. You just got to figure out how to get in touch with them. Now, Mara, before we go to Anna, is there a website or something other than yours that people should know if they need to go through one of these government, like you said, the regional center? Is there something you can tell us that Lauren can put in the chat of how someone that is on a budget could go to this organization?
Yeah, I can post a link in the chat. Is that okay? I can
Yes,
just
that's perfect. Because as we mention this resource, I know someone in the audience may know somebody or they themselves would need access to that. So I wanted to give that. So Anna, now you have a very interesting background as well and a strong business background. Tell us about how your background and how did you get into this crazy part?
Well, my background starts way back in undergrad when I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I struggled and cried and stayed up late at night trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I didn't have an answer. And so I just decided to do a business degree in business administration and thinking I would get out of school and magically have a job because I had a degree. So I got that degree in business administration and couldn't find a job. So I was a nanny, but but it did give me foundational skills. And part of why I was struggling is because I needed a job where I was impacting people's lives and helping people really directly, not indirectly, directly. And so through the struggle of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, I found speech pathology, and I'm just so grateful that I did that, because as a speech therapist, there's many different avenues to provide that service, whether it's a private practice, working in the school districts. I did accent modification for a while, working in the hospital. So I really was able to find my path and continue growing as a person and as a professional through speech pathology, because there's so many ways that speech therapists can directly help individuals from birth throughout their life. So as speech therapists, we all feel really lucky that we get to like really help people, but it's our profession and we get paid for it. So
With that, Anna, this is where I'd like to start with the foundation. I'm going to kind of go in backwards. And the one thing that, I noticed right away is that you guys have very complementary skills, giving the business foundation. I didn't know you had a business background. I mean, we've talked many times, but we never had a conversation about this. I sensed you did because of the communication that we had, but I didn't know. But you have a very complementary set of skills. So I'm going to make kind of a statement, and then I just want to let both of you run with this statement in whatever direction. And I'm going to just say something that I notice, and I guess something I try to communicate to people. There are certain industries like yours, as well as I think of herbalists and people that are involved in trying to help individuals with, I'm going to say, their health and well-being. I'm going to define it as that. So when they start the company, first and foremost, they're coming from their heart, right? They're really coming from what they want to do. And not, that other people that don't create a product aren't coming from that, but these type of industries lend themselves and skills towards somebody that's maybe more positioned in that capacity. So they get into business with their heart, and they're almost scared to even talk about profit or anything around that subject, because they feel like that removes what the good is they're trying to do. And I also am seeing, as we have over the last decade, a predominance of those who are even selling products wanting to find some way to do social good. Now, what I always say is no good comes out of a lack of money, because whether you're trying to donate it or whether you're trying to do anything, if you don't make money, you become not even socially good. You know what I mean? So I'm really trying to help people with this struggle and getting them to look at the numbers and realize that profits are good. They can do good. We don't have to be afraid of them like we've been taught with the corporations. I'm going to stop at that and let you two just run with as long as you need to, because I think there's so many lessons about the mirroring of these two. Take it from there, however you want to go.
Yeah, well, I agree that Anna and I do have quite complementary skills. I really do. I think that's why we chose to work together. Is Anna really is much more. I'm getting better thanks to Lori. Much more. Sort of facile with numbers and spreadsheets. I'm following. And I think that, I've brought different things. I'm very systems oriented. I was able to build, when we started during the pandemic, which was kind of like, What's that going to be like? You know, we're supposed to see children in home, and the whole, LA County is shut down. So we had to see people, we had to see, families remotely. And I had fortunately chosen an EMR, electronic medical record, that had a built-in HIPAA compliant telehealth portion. Right. So we don't see, if we do any remote sessions, it's not via Zoom. I found that, and that was a real game changer. And then I found this other platform, which is, an added expense. But all what I realized is we're a very tech heavy company, which is a little bit unusual for a speech therapy clinic.
Yeah,
and the reason we became that is, both Ann and I have worked in schools and hospitals and nursing homes. And the biggest drag on you as a therapist is the paperwork, right? Charting, all this kinds that has to be done based on California law. So what the goal was, how can we make our very hardworking therapists, and I'd like to talk about them in a moment, how can we make them move through their day with more professionalism, more productivity, and accountability? Right. So we found this platform. It's called a client or patient matching software. And really, it's the only thing out there. I don't necessarily want to do a plug for them. I'm not here to plug them, but it was a platform that basically allows our therapists, we post referrals, we do intake the referrals we get from regional center, and then we post them on this platform. It's on an app, and based on the location and the therapist availability, they pick them up. So everyone is very independent. And I always tell people when we're interviewing people, we always say, with this independence and it comes a lot of responsibility. Like in return, we ask for a very high level of professionalism. But the systems we set up at the onset really established the infrastructure on a systems level, not just the people, but on a systems level to help us grow the company.
Can I interrupt just for a second on that, Mara? So our audience knows, when we talk about the therapist, are we talking about employees, contract labor? Can you give an idea of the structure? Because we hadn't really chatted yet about who's actually delivering the services within your business model.
Do you want me to answer that, Anna, or do you want to answer it?
Sure, go ahead. It kind of leads into what you were saying.
Yeah, so we have the actual services are delivered by speech language pathology assistants. Okay, so Anna and I both have graduate degrees in communication disorders and science. These people either have a bachelor's, meaning they've gone through Cal State LA, and gotten a bachelor's degree in communication disorders that has like a built-in SLPA kind of, where you can get your associate's an associate's degree as a
with the license.
With a license, allows you to get your license, or they just have an associate's degree. So
and are they employees then?
We are not allowed to have any contractors.
That's what I thought they're employees. Yeah. And you know what I love about what you were sharing, and I want our audience to make sure that they get this point, is that you have very specific processes in place. And I'm always communicating to the audience that really the success within our companies are our processes. If you look at Amazon, Amazon is just a process company. I love how you had processes, and I love how you're saying that. And that's why I wanted to go back to identify what these people, how they're structured. So your employees, you were saying, have a great amount of independence, but they also have a high amount of accountability. Mara, that's one of the biggest challenges, employees having independence and accountability. You said more oxymoron words. Can you just talk a little bit on how you're achieving that? I think anybody who has any company with an employee is struggling with independence and accountability.
Well, I wouldn't say we've solved it, Lori.
It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress.
Nobody on the show has ever solved. That's why I love the show, is everybody's talking about their struggles. So yeah, let's talk about the struggle.
I think the first thing that we do in our interviews is people really love our company. Please go to our Indeed reviews. We have 5-star reviews. People just have glowing reviews of us. Everyone loves this independence, being able to structure their own day. But when we interview people, we really basically say, look, we are not going to, you get to create your schedule, but we have oversight. So we have field supervisors, we have licensed graduate level SLPs who monitor their caseloads. Okay, so they're looking at their attendance rates, They're looking at, making sure their notes are done within 48 hours. That's pretty much an industry standard. They have to write progress reports every 6 months. And some folks, aren't as organized as others. They have different, work habits. So we really try. I mean, one thing I think our turnover rate up until the summer, we were retaining people for about 3 years. Then we had 2 long-term therapists leave after 3 years, but our retention rate was amazing for the work that we're doing, because there is probably, and I'm sure Anna would concur, there's nothing more challenging than going in home to deliver therapy services.
Especially in downtown LA.
Yeah, and then you add the South Central LA portion. We've had some people have to confront some really tricky situations, and our therapists. You can imagine, right? And go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things, another key point that you said, Mara, is the retention. I always explain to people that, especially in the interviewing, because the key principles of the business are the ones doing the interviewing and usually a bit of the training. That's a heavy cost that corporations that have big interviewing places don't incur, right? So the interviewing process is crucial to get the right person. And the retention is what's going to add to your ability to make money, because if you're constantly bringing on new people. So I just wanted to get the words interviewing and retention together. Maybe Lauren, throw those in the chat just for a reminder to our audience, because being in the turnaround business for years, one of the companies that had more troubles had problems interviewing properly and retention, and that disrupted their business constantly.
Yeah, we have
learning.
Go ahead.
We're learning how to do that and how to convey what our expectations are for our staff who are coming on board with us. But we still have some situations where somebody might start, we give them a caseload, and 2 weeks later they tell us that they can't do the job anymore. So we still get taken by surprise every once in a while.
That's going to happen. Yeah, that's going to happen. I used to, just as a quick story, I used to do this really strange thing when I was doing turnarounds, where I would have the person who's going to be hired, when I got to the selective person, I would have them come in and talk to the fellow peers that work at the company in closed doors and let them know that nothing they ask would ever come back to me, who was making the decision. It was all confidential. And I always told the fellow employees, tell them the good, the bad, and mostly the ugly.
Yeah.
So they're prepared.
Yeah.
We've debated on that too, because we don't want to scare somebody off all the way.
Yeah. Well, in yours, it could be even more so. Absolutely. So your business model is getting even more complicated as we're learning, because you've got employees, they have to go out of the office. You're not supervising them. They got reports they have to do, and they're coming into situations that I'm going to say will require strong judgment skills. I'm going to put that judgment, whether you're talking about a manufacturing facility or a human interaction, judgment skills are of utmost importance. So now let's just touch a little bit on how do you make this all financially work. Anna, you've got let's take some Anna in here. There's a whole lot of complications, and at the end of the day, we were talking before we started, and you were talking about an interview you did, and I love the words you use. I don't want to put any words and say them incorrectly, but you know what I'm speaking of. Can we go on that concept for a little bit and you talk about it?
So regarding profitability and women in business and women in helping professions, I discovered a few years ago that particularly women in helping professions felt like it was almost like dirty to talk about money and making money. And so when we would have new graduates come in and talk to us, because there's mostly women in our business and a few men, but mostly women, they wouldn't even ask what they were going to make or what the wages were going to be or what the benefits were going to be. And I thought this was so crazy because, going out into the workforce as a brand new grad, I knew what it felt like. And it was just a total mystery. And yet you're not even really asking the important questions for yourself. So that was really a goal of mine after starting my first business and starting to hire people is to really educate women on that it's okay to ask those questions, and it's important to ask those questions so that you can make the best decision for you. Because I had a really hard time financially when I got done with grad school because I was making so little money. And there was times where like I had nothing left. I filled my gas tank and I didn't have a dime left in the bank. And I really wanted to help people coming out of grad school be able to make good decisions for women who can stand on their own 2 feet, pay their bills, and not be dependent on anyone else if they can help it, right? Pay for their apartment, be able to buy a car, pay their grad school loans. So that was really an important concept. I didn't want people to have to basically not have a dime to their name when they got out of grad school because they didn't consider the financial responsibilities and needs. So that was kind of my baseline. And given that, once we found some successful business strategies through speech pathology, I wanted to also help the people that I came in contact with, like Mara, to be able to go to that next level and not just be speech pathologists, but be successful business owners and hopefully very successful, because that's I want to see women in particular just conquer the world. So
it's
I
so
think
true,
this is changing though. I see women asking those questions, this generation of graduates, and even the paraprofessionals, the AA degrees. These women are asking how much they're going to earn, and they're looking around at what is out there. And that's been a change that I love to see and I hate to see, because it makes us have to really stay on our toes to get our staff.
You know, Anna, I agree, because, you know, I come from the definitely older generation where you didn't ask those questions. But what I'm seeing is that, and I go back to what I said earlier, although I'm seeing women more step up and asking those questions, I'm seeing this whole slew of the new, whatever generation we're in right now, I can't remember, but where they're getting in their mind, which I do agree with, you know, we want to do social good. I'm not against social good. Be sure to know I'm saying that, but they're getting it to the point where they put that foot first, and now they're accepting no pay, accepting looking at what I can give back before they even have enough for themselves. So I think it's now gone from just women not asking to this belief about what social good means exactly, and feeling it is the antithesis of profit. Can you chat on that?
Well, that's interesting concept, but we need to make money to be able to do good. And unless you have an amazing network, a network to pay your bills, buy your food, you better figure out the money piece.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about some of our new graduates in that they have a really supportive network, so they don't have to worry about the rent, and they don't have to worry about the car payment or paying their graduate loans. You got to figure out your financial so you have to figure out how to support yourself, and then you, in my opinion, and then you can go out and do good for people.
I agree. So let's break down the business model a little bit. So we know that you're helping the children. Obviously, it's the parents that are also your clients. And there's also probably, I'm assuming, and I don't want to put words in, I'm just doing it to communicate. Do they self-pay? Do they use an insurance? So how do you get clients? And I'm sure there's a little bit of complexity, which is not just like I'm going to put my widget on Amazon, right? So let's talk about the complexities, because a lot of providers of any type of services, like I said, I'm using herbalists and healthcare people like that, they have a similar complexity around selling their services. So let's talk about it and give the audience a feel for what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. So we have towards the end of 2019, right before the pandemic hit, we were working on a program design and presented that to South Central Los Angeles Regional Center. And basically that's basically your proposal for services, like how you're going to structure services, your policies, your protocols. And then once that's approved, they put together a contract. It was a very drawn out process for us. So we have one contract with South Central Los Angeles Regional Center. And basically we don't have to do the marketing actually that we need to do is for staffing, not for referrals. We average hundreds of hours of therapy adding a week. We have to it's like every morning, it's like I say, it's like a fire hose in our face if we wanted it to be. So for us, there's so much business because of largely to do not just the pandemic, but a large part to the pandemic, because they change what they call the qualification, like what's the percent delay that qualifies. They lowered that, so there's even more children to see. So attracting, marketing for referrals is not an issue for us. We have our built-in referral base. And the therapists, and you're right, Lori, you're right. The parents, really what we're doing is providing a parent education or parent coaching. We're with the kids once a week or twice a week for 50 minutes. We are not magicians. We have no pixie dust in our pockets that we can sprinkle over the kids and say, Shazam, they're talking. We really have to train the parents to do what we call carryover skills. So after the therapist leaves, then the parent has been educated how to elicit longer sentences, how to build vocabulary, how if a child is pre-linguistic or nonverbal, it's also called, how to work with them on songs or other pre-linguistic skills. So we have no shortage of referrals. What we face and across the industry is staffing, because we're drawing from a very small candidate pool. It's not like you're putting up an ad on Indeed for a hostess, right? We're looking for people who have specific licensing. And then also what we did, Lori, from the outset, Anna and I, we're in South Central and LA. Anna and I are not, Latina Spanish speakers, but we knew that was going to be our demographic. So the first couple years, we hired 100% bilingual therapists, Spanish, English. And what was so beautiful about it, and it kind of happened kind of organically, like one of those sort of like, you sit back and you go, how did we do that? We found all these wonderful people, SLPAs, speech language pathology assistants. I have a funny story. I was texting somebody about SLPAs, and the text to speech wrote strippers, and I thought, oh, that's good.
Yeah, we've had, Mara, I want to go back to something you were speaking about a second ago and getting the contract. So,
right.
And I'm going to tell you something that I get asked a lot and how I answer it. And you tell me if there's some truth to what I'm saying, because I always wonder after I'm giving this advice, if my information I'm giving is correct as well. So you're checking on me. So I get a lot of, now these are people that are coming to the SBDC. They don't even have a company yet, may not have any, really solid background in even creating the company. And they're automatically first forehand asking for government contracting or some kind of contracting like you're speaking of. And what I tell them is that although there is some existence of such, most of those are long processes and require you to have a proven concept where you show that you've been in business or have stability, and you have to go through a huge process that may even require a grant writer. And so to start a company, you should not look at, I'm going to get this to start the company. You may need to start the company and then try to apply, because many are thinking they're going to start the company with these grants. I personally, I'm saying it very respectfully, because I don't want to be the person that says ain't ever going to happen, because things do happen in the world. But it's been really a bigger fallacy since COVID with all the COVID grants. Now everybody thinks I can get a grant to do good and I can start my company on that grant. So give us just a little bit of thought process on that concept of, I'm going to open my company and get a grant, and that's going to be how I'm going to launch.
Well, I mean, I know companies who do focus on grant writing, and they get, grants for 10, 20, 30, $40,000. That's not how they started their business though. But what we did is we had a relationship with South Central LA before we opened the business. We had to have a brick and mortar address. even though for our speech services, 90% are in home, 10% are in clinic, we still needed an address, and it needed to be in a certain, what they call catchment area. So each regional center has these, basically they're groups of zip codes. So there was a very specific catchment area that we knew there was a need in. So it took me about, no kidding, 6 months to find an appropriate space that wasn't going to be, you know, $6,500 a month, because we just simply couldn't afford it. It had to be, you know, ADA accessible. There had to be a parking lot, you know, and we're in an area that is, it's a family neighborhood, but it's a tougher neighborhood, and we have you know, safety issues that we always have to keep an eye on. But we needed a lot of things in place before they'd even have a meeting with us. And then there's this loss. You have to have funds to tide you over during that time, because, you know, you can work like a dog with a bone, like I was, but it's on their timeline. So you have to be prepared to, you know, float a little bit as best you can, and have, you know, other sources of income or something going on, because it's a slow process. And it's like you said, Laura, it's a bureaucracy. And you can make friends with the bureaucracy. And like I always tell Anna, like, don't poke the bear. You know what I mean? Because,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Because they can be a little bit tempestuous at that agency. So we're very careful with our relationships there.
Well, and it becomes a concern too, because if that is your main funnel, that if anything happens, it puts you in a, you know, we called it concentration of receivables in the banking. And I know, you know, I always am very conscious about that as well. And then in that, and I'm assuming that there's a certain pay rate that they're providing, which is your sales basically, which means you've got a challenge financial internal to structure to make sure you fit within that. It's not like you can turn around and say, well, you know what, we're going to do a price increase because our expenses went up. So I'm assuming that's quite a financial balancing act. I'm getting it. Yeah, let me just let you take it from there.
Well, it truly is. And we just always have to keep an eye on what the wages are, what the benefits are that we're paying, mileage, and make sure it's fitting within our business model, and what we're paying ourselves. So that's why it's so important to like really understand numbers and understand how your money's flowing out and how your money's flowing in. And right now, that's why we've chosen not to accept private insurance, is because private insurance pays different amounts in different areas. And while they may pay really well in Orange County per se, those same contracts, when you are trying to serve a different area, may pay a lot lower. And so that's right now why we are sticking with the regional centers, just because private insurance, if you don't think governments, wait until you try and deal with private health insurance.
I have been through that with many companies. I know that to be true. Now, in that, and something just to kind of speak to lightly, I talk about this with all companies, but you and I just went through this process where I identify the employees and the activities that they're doing towards what I call production, because otherwise what happens is you can get people with many different salaries performing different productivity, and you're not really looking at what is it technically taking financially for you to produce your service. Even if you're doing a service, you're still doing a production. And so this concept of really having to monitor how much you're paying the employees and their actions, activities, and timeframes to producing the service, to make sure, because really when you're looking at your kind of business model, it's not so much the rent, it's not the manufacturing, it's the people that is the biggest cost. You know, it's often said the biggest asset and liability are walking around the shop floor, right? And so that becomes the part that you have to really manage. So anything you can share with on how to monitor, manage, and analyze the production and the cost from the people perspective.
Well, I think part of our recruiting is that we have to look at the cost of being a good employer. And so that's our first, you know, discussion that we're having all the time is, are we going to pay full benefits, or should they pay a portion of those benefits? What about the going rate that they can go out in the open market? Are we competitive in that rate that we can offer them? And we talk about this almost every other month, because there's such a great need for these individuals. And what do you know? Our competitor down the street starts offering $5 more, and we hear about it right away. And unfortunately, like, we don't get to go back to our referral source and be like, can we have $5 more an hour?
Right.
We kind of have to wait and see if they'll give that to us maybe once a year, maybe not at all. And so we're balancing. There is a margin. That's why we're here. And this is why we're still in business 3 years later. But we really have to watch where that money is going and how we're going to spend it. So when we open a new program, that may take away from our benefits that we can add, or it may take away from that party that we're going to have for our people. And we need to put that money towards maybe growing a new program. So it's watching the margin. And if we have a little bit of profit, what are we going to do with that profit?
Yeah. Mara, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would also say that it's, it's the people out there, as we were saying earlier, have gotten very savvy in our industry about what, and they will try to do an apples to apples comparison about what other bilingual in-home therapy providers, like what's so-and-so paying, and we get a lot of that. We get a lot of very smart, mostly women, negotiating with us. And it can be, I respect it. I really do respect it. Like Anna was saying, like, it's about time that women are stepping in and stepping up. So I respect it. And then at the same time, our insurance rates have gone up, like our liability, and we have to have all kinds of other insurances, workers' comp, everything everything has gone up. Our health insurance, our liability insurance, rent minimal, everything has gone up except our rates. So, and sometimes in order to retain people, we have, given them a potentially an hourly, we pay hourly, an hourly rate increase, but it's because, losing somebody who's been a real great team player, very productive, we don't want to do that. We just can't really afford to do that because it's, our therapists work very hard. They really, really work hard. They're, like I was saying earlier, a lot of them grew up in South Central LA. They came back to the community where they grew up with their skills and their toolkit, and they're lifting up the community where they grew up. So they feel very purposeful. And I didn't really foresee that when we were first starting. It just kind of snowballed, and the word got out that Words in Motion, like we pay a higher rate for bilingual therapists because we consider it a skill. And it is that cultural congruence, especially with communication, Lori, is just very powerful.
Now, you brought up something, and it was interesting because, Mara, your speech and what you were saying was one of the last things that I wanted to just chat about briefly, and that is government regulation. So many people have a hard time, even with business license, guys. They're just not used to having to deal with the legalese and the forms and everything. And I know you guys have a lot of government regulation. So from just advice to the audience when they're trying to deal with making sure they're in compliance, even if it's just filling out the statement of information on their LLC, I try to tell people just approach it, read it, be respectful of it, be conscious of it, make sure you follow through, make sure you're organized. Those are my little statements, but what could you add to that? Because there's complexities and sometimes people are afraid of it.
Well, I would say just stay in compliance.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Like it's not fun. It's like we just went through this review, which cost us $7,000, Lori.
Wow.
Right? Like kabam. And we had to have our CPA do it. And it was like, holy cow. And it was just like, I had my head in the computer for like 4 weeks. Just they were asking for all the CPA, it was following, regional centers requests, all these very arcane numbers and invoices. And I just stuck with it. I just tucked my head down and I just stuck with it. And it's that thing that sometimes what you talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. This was the ugly.
Yeah.
In the chat, they were just talking about insurance companies, and we get a workers' comp audit every year. So because we grew, guess what? We were paying our workers' comp, but at the end of the year, we had to pay another $6,000 to $8,000 because we grew, and that hadn't been accounted for when we made our first payment.
Yeah, and I think the amazing thing is, I've owned a business years and years ago, a very different kind of business, but just how expensive it is to run a business in California. No,
I can't agree more. Yeah.
yeah, like know that in every cell of your body. And yes, right, Anna? You know, like yes, you can figure out how to save money here, save money there, but like unless you're a a magician, which sometimes I think Lori is, I just don't the numbers, the saving, it's a lot. And I think a lot of people that who work with us work very hard. They think we're like, they're making so much money, right? And we are, but look at our books.
Yeah.
With all that money being made, there's all this money being put out to pay for, we cover our people's insurance 100% if they work for us full time. And what we call full time, Anna and I set a very low bar because we knew that it's a challenging job. So yeah, so we really, our goal was to be, really compassionate, smart, supportive employers. And I think we've achieved that. I really do, Anna.
Regarding even, Lori, back to what you asked about government contracts, it does, whether it's government contracts or it's the relationships of our vendors, or to me, the lifelong lesson I learned is it's about relationships. We're getting a new line of credit because our banker called us and said, hey, I'm going to be able to get you guys this line of credit. It's about the person that we knew at Regional Center. It's about a competitor that we're friendly with, and she'll text us when something comes through the pipeline, like, oh, you should ask about this. And those relationships with the other business owners, our bankers, the vendoring side of things, those all helped us get where we are now. And I think that's the one thing, is like, relationships are so important, especially in our business, because it's a small community.
Yeah.
You never know when you're going to need that person or want to run into that person or have a conversation where you learn something that's going to change the course of how you do business.
Absolutely. I've got so many thoughts. I'm like trying to make sure I organize them correctly right now. One of the things that I'm going to just throw a few out there as we're coming to the end. First of all, this has been a completely fascinating discussion. Thank you so much to both of you, because we're dealing with a complete different business model. But if we look at, compared to the show last week and the last week and the last week and on to the beginning, it really is an expression of the challenges and how hard it is to run a small company, and how much you have to stay on the numbers to make sure you're getting a profit, because it's not like profit is just easy. You've got, especially like you said, in California, there's a high level of expense. Personally, I've always been an entrepreneur because I always said, I don't want to be told what to do. I think it was always a character flaw. And I've often said, not so much now that I'm, 59, but definitely in my 30s and 40s, I would say to myself, I just so wish I had the personality to be an employee, because I know I'd be off on weekends. I'd have holidays. Yeah, I think I would even made more money, being an employee, because the times I did, an aspect. But, it's almost like that I did it my way song. I think there's something about the entrepreneurial spirit, and what I love about it is the power to own your own destiny, to own your own destiny. And what I think you really brought up today is that another aspect of being an entrepreneur being difficult, but the passion and the wonderful feelings and the control for our own life and our destiny that we get out of it. And that's kind of been my takeaway from this conversation. It's all the same elements, but at the end of the day, as difficult as it is, we're going to keep doing it on our own, aren't we?
I wish I could go back and be an employee. I really do.
I know, it's like, once you're changed, I started my first company at 25. It ruined me for life, because then I was like, no, I can't work for somebody ever again. And I do think that also, I wanted to make one more statement, what you just said, Anna, about local and community. To me, I don't care if you're selling international. It's really about local and community, and your local could be somebody in another state, but it's that tight knit group of people that you lean on and you communicate with, that help you and you help them to be successful. So as we're coming here to the end, please, any last thoughts that you would both like to add to this fascinating conversation?
We have found your guidance invaluable. So thank you so much for helping us understand our own numbers and look at it through a new light. And we're just continuing to grow and learn. We're doing business different this year than we did last year, and I'm sure we'll do it differently next year. So we really appreciate your guidance.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I feel, yeah, Lori, I feel like you're really sort of, facilitating us getting our arms, like our entire arms around everything. Whereas before we were a little bit like there was a distance because it was just, it's a lot,
It was out of focus a little bit.
Yeah. So it's been, we really, yeah. And the general organization has just been, anybody out there who's looking for, guidance by a bunch of very smart people, this is the way to go.
Well, thank you so much. And then
Yeah.
I know we're a little bit of a minute over, but I did want to come back, and I just want to, from a positive standpoint, if I could, if there is one, I don't want to put a spin on it, but I might be speaking for the audience, and I don't want to get too much in a controversial topic, but I know many of us are concerned for the children who during the COVID have suffered communication issues. So Mara, maybe this is for you. Are you seeing progress with these children? Can we think that we're going to get somewhere with them?
That's a really good question, because there are a lot of studies that are emerging that are showing that a lot of these children who were delayed, some of them globally delayed, which means not just speech and language, but there are other things going on, that they are not catching up at the rate they were similar children were doing prior to the pandemic. So the pandemic was a real, like, not a 1-2 punch, but like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 punch. And anybody who's working with children in a therapeutic mindset, we're looking at years of catching up. You hear about schools where they're having second graders repeat second grade, right? So and these little ones, their brains, are just so receptive, but it's just like they didn't have the right exposure, support, the family, they had people in their home. It was a total disaster. And I have faith that the community, like every speech therapist I know who works in early intervention, they're very, very committed to helping these little ones, as they matriculate and beyond. But then it ends up in the hands of the schools, which is a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for both of you coming on the show and for helping out the children. I'm sure I'm not the only one that had that question, so I just wanted to ask, because I know our hearts are going out to those that have really not had the coping skills. Not that I feel like I'm in much better shape after the pandemic, but at least from an adult perspective. So with that, Lauren, has this not been another fascinating discussion about a business model very unique to our previous sessions?
It's so good. Actually, my nephew sees a speech, it goes through speech therapy. So, and he's 7 now and has been for like 2 years. So it's interesting to see this side of things as well, because I know it from, of course, being like an auntie or a parent.
Yes.
But this is awesome. And I love that your model includes your staff reflecting the neighborhood you're serving. I think that's, I mean, it makes common sense to me, but not many think about that. And I think that's awesome. Yeah. It's a great story.
Another wonderful story. So I want to thank all our audience, our frequent flyers that are here every week. And thank you so much for joining us today, and hope to see you next week. And Anna and Mara, this has been absolutely fascinating. I learned so much throughout it as well, and it was quite a feel good. I mean, I know we talked about a lot of, oh my God, this is challenging, but I'm leaving it with a feel good, because at the end of the day, I think if we all pull together as small companies, we take our power back and we take things into our own hands, we can do good in the world for us and everybody about us. I don't think it's about government. I don't think it's about anything on a large. It's about you and us individuals. I think that's where the changes are going to come in the world. And the small companies affect a lot of people. They touch a lot of lives. And I think we have more power as individuals and small companies than we realize we do. And I hope my interaction with people and Small Biz Talk helps you to realize how much power you really have.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to thank so much everybody for joining and tuning in to Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Thank you, Lauren, as all for behind the scenes. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Lori. Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank
Erin
you,
and Mara.
Bye.
All right, everyone, please focus on the chat. Take a look at all the contact information for both Anna and Mara. If you know anyone who needs their services, please be sure to look into them. I have their website. So again, it's https //wordsandmotion.net. So again, the link is in the chat. Let me paste it again now. If you are looking to set up some time with Lori to go over your numbers or taxes or what have you, please send an email to me, Lauren, at lsimpson@lbcc.edu. Again, that email is in the chat. Let me make it, I'm going to copy and paste so that you can see it lower in the chat. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate that. And thank you all of you for all of your comments and just, joining us. We love it. So, Randy, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. See what a compliment does for you? It just brightens your whole day. All right, you guys have a good one. We will see you next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Small Biz Talk, Solutions for Your Small Business. Take care.